So the solar eclipse in Aries arrives this week, 19 April or 20 April, depending on your time zone. It's a big deal because it's the first eclipse in the new pair of signs that eclipses will travel through every 2 years roughly. The first eclipse in Aries Libra, solar eclipse in Aries, coming right up this week. Stay tuned. So welcome here, I'm S.J. Anderson. This is my YouTube channel where I talk about the transiting astrology. I like to dive into what is unfolding in our astrological symbol set because it speaks to our reality. It speaks to what's happening in our lives so often. That's what astrology is by definition, the movement of the heavens reflected in the materiality of the earth and in the lives of human beings and of nature and of the world at large. And so this is a big event. It's the solar eclipse in Aries. Eclipses are always by their nature intensifications of reality, fate emerging, and sometimes can be quite intense, the events that arrive when eclipses hit, and these seasons of eclipses that happen twice a year, sometimes 3 eclipses, most often 2 eclipses per season every 6 months. And so we're here in it. If you've been feeling like late last week, kind of getting pulled into this moment, it's probably this eclipse that's coming. All planets except the moon have been set in the signs they'll be in during this eclipse for a little while now, ever since Venus entered Gemini quite recently. And so first thing I want to describe here is that we have the first eclipse of the 2-year cycle, like I said, but Jupiter's finishing out its time in Aries this cycle. This is extremely important because we've enjoyed Jupiter strong in Aries, expansive planet, large expansions. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, a fire sign, in Aries, a fire sign where it has nitriplicity rulership. Jupiter providing the way in a certain sense, the inspiration, the knowledge, and the wisdom for all of the new reality that we're in now, post Saturn in Aquarius, post Mars is long retrograde in Gemini, Mars now moving forward. So it was very lovely to have Jupiter in Aries. It's been wonderful. Revelation and wisdom around the selfhood and the action and the dynamism. It really does feel like a whole new world out here in a lot of ways. I mean, the COVID restrictions are done for the most part. You can travel freely in most places without having any kind of restriction. That's changing everything. That alone is a huge change. I mean, think about 2020, 21, and 22 and how travel was inhibited by policy. That's all done. And so I see where I am. There's tourists. People are out exploring for the first time in a few years, more than they ever have been. So there really is a sense of the new action that's possible here in spring and summer 2023. And I think a large part of that has to do with Jupiter being in Aries. Jupiter sort of initiating the new, the first sign of the zodiac. I want to just point out here as we talk about eclipses and transits, it's always worth mentioning this, that there's the inner experience of transits. It doesn't always have to be some kind of outer world massive change in the life, some big event. Often they can be inner revelations. They can be about the perception and the relationship to reality and the beliefs and the inner life that we are carrying all the time with us as we move in to and through reality. And so look for that, look around. I mean, you might think about Jupiter in your Aries sector. It's like, well, nothing really happened. Well, what about your inner world around it? Were there beliefs that were altered, new truths that were digested? This is very much how transits can operate, and particularly Jupiter, which can be about that inner experience. Remember, Jupiter rules by exaltation Cancer and rules by domicile Pisces. And so Jupiter is of the nature of those inner realms, those more internalized ways of being. And I think with Jupiter and with Aries, one of the larger themes I want us all to contemplate here is moving through the world or in the world with personal empowerment and self-assurance. Where have you felt renewed strength, renewed power, a renewed sense of selfhood since December 20 last year and then last summer that's been building in that sector of your chart? Because all of it's peaking here with the solar eclipse. Jupiter will be, during this eclipse, 23 degrees, 41 degree minutes. The eclipse is in that Anaretic degree, 29 degrees. So you're looking at a 6-degree range where Jupiter's quite close there to this eclipse. And Jupiter will leave Aries in May. Within 3 weeks of this eclipse, Jupiter's gone. And so this really is a culmination and a climax of that Aries story, the personal empowerment and the self-assurance that we've been able to adapt to and gain recently. Now the eclipse comes. The hand of God comes to kind of put the top and the icing and kind of rearrange everything before we move on to new themes with the Jupiter cycle. So it's kind of a lovely thing in a certain way that we get to work with Jupiter and enjoy the gains of Jupiter, and then we sort of surrender into the shifts and alterations here that eclipse season can bring. So let's come back to some of this cycle work. Always with eclipses, there's dates we can just pull up to ground us in the time cycle. You see here, this is the first eclipse in the Aries sector, 20 April 2023. The last eclipse in the Aries sector and in the Aries Libra axis, in fact, will be 29 March 2025. So we're looking at almost 2 years here of getting worked over, you might say, massaged by the fated alterations that are eclipses in Aries and in Libra. And this begins it. Aries is a sign of beginning, of action to begin things, initiate things. And now this eclipse comes, the first of a 2-year cycle, to begin these kind of the weirdness, the strangeness, and the fate that comes to this sector. So I think that's very important to acknowledge. Look for new beginnings this week. Look for things that are arriving for the first time in your life. And pay attention, because they may be hanging around here for the next 2 years. The other thing I wanted to point out is that these eclipses, last time in the Aries Libra axis, there's 2 pockets. There was eclipses in 2004, 2005, 2006. There were a series of eclipses in Aries. That's when the nodes were in the same position that they are now. But in 2014, 2013, 2015, we had that inverse nodal return, and we had eclipses also in Aries Libra. So look for those years, 2013, 2014, 2015, mid-teens, early to mid-teens. What was your life like? What were the themes? And then early to mid-aughts, what was your life like and what were the themes? Just thinking about those cycles can be very revelatory. I found it often with clients and with my own life, just thinking, oh yeah, it's that eclipse cycle again. Look how that's resonating with what's happening now. Oh, wow. And then I remembered that was what was going on. And that's how my attitude was then. Well, now I've got this new wisdom and I can change my attitude or change my approach to the events that are emergent. And so keep that in mind when you're reflecting back on mid-teens, early to mid-teens, early to mid-aughts with those cycles. And you can see on the screen here the exact dates of the eclipses in Aries if you're looking for some exact dates. I'm not going to break all that down in this video. Back into the chart of the eclipse, the Anaretic degree, where this eclipse takes place. In the modern astrological schools, they talk about instability, tension as the energy is about to shift into a new sign. Those final degrees can be tension degrees, the Anaretic degree. And so keep this in mind. This could still just be a little bit of an instability because of where it's hitting. Sometimes change is tough. To transition into some new energy can be tough, and that's what that Anaretic degree, I think, really represents. When you go to the ancient system, we look at something called Egyptian terms, and the last degrees of every sign are in a Egyptian term of Saturn or Mars. And I think that's where the origin of the Anaretic degree theory comes from, is that you have to deal with Saturn or Mars as you get towards the end of the sign. And so I just think here, how have the last months been with Jupiter and Aries, right? This whole time since 20 December up through the present. Jupiter was in Aries, but then Saturn came to Pisces in March. So since March 7th, about 6 weeks, we've had Saturn in Pisces, its major ruler, Jupiter, in Aries. And there's a dissonance there, the Pisces-Aries dissonance. Pisces is the final sign of the release of the self into the ocean of being and the creativity that emerges from that experience. Aries is the knowledge of self to initiate something new. So there really is tension. It's a water mutable sign versus an initiatory fire sign. It's action versus release. And so that's what I'm wondering about here with the Anaretic degree. I think if there is instability, it comes from the fact that Saturn is in Pisces and the ruling planet of Saturn is in Aries. And what I have here is that questions of self in the new shifting world, change can be difficult, especially so much change recently. Even in my own little world, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a social media person, I'm an astrologer, and my tools have shifted and altered. I use AI more than I ever have. Because of how powerful the tool is. The art you see on my channel is all AI generated. Of course, I'm generating with prompts, and I'm initiating those prompts and then working with the AI to come up with the select images that I find meet the quality standard that I'm looking for. So it's not like AI just does it. I mean, I'm actively involved, but it can be hard on the psyche, I think. It can be hard on us sometimes to realize the old world's not here anymore. It's gone. It's not coming back either. And we've unleashed this new thing. And it's not just AI, but AI is powerfully significant. It's fundamental to how business and activity and life will be lived. But it's also just going back to these ideas of like pandemic years are over. I mean, the announcement of the end of the emergency phase happened on that Jupiter Cazimi. So the official government policies now say the emergency phase is over, and there's a lot more openness in the world than there's been in a few years. And that could be kind of strange because we adjust and get used to what the world's like. I mean, I find myself realizing, dang, I actually can travel more freely now. I don't have to see myself staying in the same little zone. And it's kind of weird because that's how I saw myself for a long time. And I'm like, it was kind of strange, really. Oh, really? I can? I don't have to worry? And so we're shifting out of one phase, Saturn and Aquarius, for 3 years. And now we're into this whole new, strange, immutable Piscean phase at a time when that ruling planet Aries was in Aries, Jupiter saying, do something new. So it's a little bit of a tough dissonance. So I've been embracing AI, like I said. I've been able to code stuff. I've been wanting to code for so long. I've got so many projects that require coding. I have no idea how to code, and I really don't want to learn. The times I've tried to learn, it's just really onerous, and I'm like, I get tired and sick of it. But I've used ChatGPT to code stuff. Look at this. This is my new thing. I'm going to have an updated website where you will be able to go and just load and always see where the planets are, the 7 traditional, just like this code is showing. But you can see here, this is the outlay of the current planets. As I record this, both are in Pisces, the moon and Saturn. All the pieces are here in place for the eclipse. You've got Jupiter and the sun in Aries, Mercury in Taurus, Venus in Gemini, and Mars in Cancer. But it's a nice way to graphically represent the ephemeris. The coding has allowed me to do this. So I'm kind of embracing these changes and using the powers that they're giving us. But it's still kind of finding my way. Like, I don't really know where this is going to go, or how I'm going to be able to fully, be engaged once things are all said and done and these new powers are kind of fully integrated. So that might be some of the shifting sands, but just one of the examples, I think, of the power of Jupiter and creative power. It's so important when we think about the astrology of this eclipse, is that you have the eclipse happening in Aries with Jupiter. You then have Mars, the domicile lord of the eclipse, in Cancer. And the 2 planets that rule Cancer more than any other planets are Jupiter and the moon. Look where they are. They're both back in Aries. And so this is a classic mutually received eclipse moment where you have a high level of exchange and reliance and supportive dependence between Cancer and Aries. 2 cardinal signs, both water and fire signs, both engaged in, water can cool us down when we have the fire. If it gets too dry, we get to wet ourselves by being in water or drinking water. So there's very much a teamwork style with air and water signs. But this looping dependence between Aries and Cancer, it's great mitigation. So whatever fated changes are happening, know that you can revert back to the lunar and act in the lunar, which is nurturing, which is thinking about the deeper nature of being and who we are and where we've come from, protecting the people around us, nurturing the people around us fiercely, having clarity. The new identities of Aries are brought back into the home. So what is it? Great mitigation, finding home and new identities that we are feeling into. Those identities are finding outlets within the home life and the nurturance and the care and the brood around us. And it's beautiful to have this combination and this sort of flywheel of exchange that, Mars and Cancer can revert back to its rulers in Aries. A lot of astrologers are saying, well, Mars has fallen. Oh no, this is horrible. I see this completely different. Because of these receptions, that Mars and Cancer, we actually get the best possible Mars and Cancer energy during this eclipse, actually, because it has this dependence and looping dependence with the moon and Jupiter. Now, it sounds all nice, doesn't it? Okay, and I don't mean to undersell the intensities and the sometimes problems that eclipses can bring. There's no way to maneuver around that. Eclipses, by their nature, can suggest pause, review, inner orientation, and all kinds of shifts and alterations that are unexpected. That's what it is. It's the sky is blocked. The sun or the moon is blocked. And it's strange. We don't see it very often. And so eclipses bring this not very often strangeness to that sector. So I don't mean to say, well, oh, there's this mutual reception. The eclipse is not an eclipse anymore. No, of course it's an eclipse, and we should treat it with the severity and seriousness that it requires. It's just that I think that mutual reception allows it to be softer and maybe more palatable, and it provides the tonality of meaning that can be quite useful to the eclipse moment, which is, again, one where I always suggest turn down, go spiritual, go into inner work. And that's what I have here on this slide. This is also doubled up by the fact that Mercury will be stationing retrograde the day after the eclipse. So Mercury entered Taurus on 3 April. It leaves Taurus finally on 11 June, and it stations retrograde the day after the eclipse. In the eclipse chart, Mercury is stationary, just about stationary retrograde. And that's what Mercury retrograde is. Pause, wait, delay, don't do anything, go inward and review and analyze, and get the phase of life where it's more evaluation rather than unthinking activity. And so this is just another major theme in the moment, and I wanted to add it here because what would it mean? Pausing and reviewing and going inward and waiting and letting life happen around areas of who we are and those that we want to protect. And so it may be that we're just kind of getting down to the fundamentals of reality, cooking, cleaning, doing push-ups and sit-ups. I'm talking about me, getting into my rhythms of work, making sure everything's taken care of at a base level, and just focusing on that during an eclipse season to allow reality to emerge and let it unfold. You'll see that's what I'm going to talk about later. Eclipses, we have to let a reality emerge and unfold, and then we can sort of respond. I like to wait until after eclipse season and then say, okay, look around, what changed, what was altered, what did the gods intervene, or what did God say I need to be doing, paying attention to the evidence of the unfoldment during the eclipses, and then acting anew. And in this eclipse season, it's particularly important because Mercury stations direct 15 May. That is 10 days after the second eclipse. And Mercury would be then slowing and about to station direct right after that second eclipse. I think it's a perfect thing. Wait until May 15th, 16th, 17th. To then reevaluate and maybe move forward again as Mercury is moving forward. We go back to dates, and I just want everybody to keep in mind we had 2 new moons in Aries this year. This is the second of 2 new moons. You had a new moon back on 21 March, right in the first degree of Aries, initiating major newness in this sector, and now we get the second new moon, which is the solar eclipse that brings the alteration. So think back to March 21st to this 19 April eclipse, 20 April eclipse, and just review all of the things that have happened. Second is that there are 19-year cycles, as I've already mentioned. There was an eclipse in this Anaretic degree in Aries in 2004, while the North Node was in Taurus as well. And I just tweeted this out. The illegal occupation of Iraq was in full swing, and there was all kinds of events that following week related to bombs with insurgencies and freedom fighters there trying to slough off the oppressor. But you think back to your life is the main thing. What was going on in 2004, April 19th? This exact same eclipse are very similar. Maybe you'll have some reflections on just even the tonalities that were operative, or the ideas, or the 2 or 3 big issues you were grappling with, and look for resonances to now. It might give you clues not only about how to process what you're dealing with right now, but hints about how you might want to act differently and try to work with different outcomes than those that happened in 2004. So this is another very important part of any eclipse, is you check out where will it be visible? What countries can see it during daytime and actually experience the sun being blocked out by the moon, or that blood moon, or that moon that changes color. April 2023, solar eclipse. This is earthsky.org, their little write-up and their map, but you can see it runs right through Australia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, all of those countries there. Singapore will see it. But look where it is, right in Taiwan, the Strait of Taiwan, and right near Taiwan, just at the edge of this eclipse. And so this is something that's in the news now that'll stay in the news, is the Taiwan-China issue that's become quite important in the past couple of weeks, with military games happening in the Strait of Taiwan and all kinds of conversations as China's emerged on the global scene, doing peace deals with Iran and Saudi Arabia. China's here, and so eclipse timing can be complex. I just want to throw that out here. Some people talk 2 years or more. If you use the classic Ptolemaic model for measuring their effects, you could have 6 months. Sometimes people say it's from eclipse season to eclipse season. That's when an eclipse stays operative. Or some just say 2 weeks until the next eclipse. Or, when this eclipse season is over, then the eclipse effects are done. I think they're all important. All of those types of timing models can be important. I'm looking for, a 2-year range. 2 years from now, Uranus enters Gemini in 2025. It starts, I think, fully into Gemini in 2026, but it peaks into Gemini into 2025. That can be big for all hosts of things. I might do a whole video on the Uranus and Gemini cycle just to give some additional context. I was tweeting about the Uranus return triple pass this year of the invasion of Poland in 1939. 2 of them are this year, and then 1 in April next year is the 3rd and final pass. So we're getting into that mid-century, 1939, 1940 war moment with the Uranus cycle, that return. And I think when you see this news, like for example here's Brave browser news, you just put Taiwan as the only keyword. These are the top stories. Americans warm to U.S. defense of Taiwan if China invades. China sanctions U.S. lawmaker for his visit to Taiwan, claiming he violated one China principle. German foreign minister warns of horror scenario in Taiwan Strait. So you have all of this stuff with Taiwan right here on the radar, right here with this eclipse. Definitely something I'm keeping an eye on over the next 2 years and in the news now. So you see the eclipse and you're like, there it is. The astrology is working, and the work of an astrologer is pretty clear. We just have to kind of connect some real apparent dots that are right in front of us. And if you want to get out ahead on a conversation about Uranus and Taurus and Gemini, check out the video I did with Dan Waits on his great World Astrology Report channel. It's called The Astrology of the 2020s, America Transformed. We cover it all there in detail. I think the video I'm going to do is going to cover some of the details that are a level below the high level breakdown that we did together. Here are the dates of Uranus into Gemini. It's 7 July 2025. And then it goes back into Taurus 8 November 2025, and then finally enters Gemini for good 26 April 2026. This is the pocket where we get that shift from 1930s into like the early 1940s that has timed America's involvement in these wars, the major wars in American history. So this is very much on my radar. Of course, I'm not predicting war. I never really do that. I predict peace. I want peace to come. I want to transmute all of these resonances and into some kind of peaceful resolution. And I'm hoping the age of air that we're in, with Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions in air signs, can bring out a new style by which we can resolve warfare and resolve conflict in more of a technological and information-based model. All right, there is a book that I've referred to quite a bit here. I want to refer to it again, Astrology, a Cosmic Science by Isabel M. Hickey, the classic work on spiritual astrology. I just love this book. In her chapter on the moon's node, she talks about the north node representing new conscious patterns to be unfolded. I love how that is in the passive tense, first of all, to be unfolded. And then the verb unfold is something that implies a passivity in some sense, because it's like allowing for something that's layered to not emerge initially, that there's a few steps that it takes to finally let something come to life, and we have to sort of allow for the unfoldment with the consciousness. And that's what I think the eclipse cycle can be about. Remember, this eclipse is near the north node. It's a north node eclipse with the north node in Taurus. And I wanted just to bring in this idea of unfoldment and conscious, deliberate choice to allow for an unfoldment. And I typed this into ChatGTP. I do this a lot lately because it can give answers and it can help guide information or searches or explorations. It's not true often. It can tell you lies, it can make up books, it can make up sources. So you always have to double and triple check what the ChatGTP is giving back to you. But it can be really good, like in this case. I just typed in, does a flower unfold naturally? And what are the common names for that process? Because I'm thinking about the unfoldment of a budding flower and how you can't force it open. That's what you don't want to be doing during an eclipse season. You don't want to rip that flower open. You want to wait, like I was talking earlier, and allow the reality to do its natural thing. See, eclipses key us into the real nature of things. The fact that the sun and moon are exactly the same size from how we experience them, and they can cover each other exactly with the Earth, Sun, and Moon line, the syzygies. There's the perfect size. That's the true nature of our, physical space we're in. And that's what eclipses bring, the true nature of things. But we have to pay attention. I mean, these people didn't, you have to notice to even see the eclipse, first of all. Second of all, you have to then notice the cycles to begin mapping out the patterns. The Metonic cycle, for example, were people that paid attention to this and then used mathematics to then come up with reasons why they happen every 19 years. And then the Soros cycle and other cycles. So there's something to be said for paying attention, and then the wisdom and knowledge of our true nature that can emerge from that paying attention during an eclipse cycle or period of eclipses. But this is what ChatGTP said. Yes, a flower does unfold naturally as it transitions from a bud to a fully open bloom. This process is commonly referred to as blooming, flowering, or opening. And it goes through here, the unfolding of the flower petals is a response to various environmental cues, such as light, temperature, humidity, which trigger the growth and the development of the flower. I want you to think about responding to the cues in your environment that happen during this eclipse season, during this solar eclipse and the weeks after the eclipse. Pay attention to the environment and the cues around you, because that's how we then can respond and say, oh yes, there's where the growth is happening here, and I can lean into that. Or this is where I seem to be called by God, or, my higher power, or however you think about your cosmology, the gods that are operative in your world, they're calling me here. And so we pay attention to environmental cues, much like a flower unfolds or buds naturally. We don't, in my view, want to force things right now. You want to pay attention. Mercury's retrograde. Don't force. Wait. Pause. Reflect. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about a few charts here. The land between eclipses, the so-called bardo, the so-called in-between realm, where we've had the solar eclipse in Aries, and then we're waiting for the 5 March lunar eclipse in Scorpio. 3 charts. I wouldn't really use these as elections. Don't be looking to launch a business or do big moves right now. Pause, wait, delay, reflect, pray. But these are charts I'm interested in. And one major theme of this whole period is Venus and Gemini, and how the moon's pivoting in this waxing phase in between eclipses. It really has some nice pivots around Venus and Gemini. My last video, I talked about the nature of the beauty of language and the kind of beauty of talking and sharing and notation, how beautiful that can be, that we can even articulate. This is, I think, a major theme of the land between eclipses, and you might want to use Venus and Gemini here to feel in, even try to talk about what's happening, like I was doing here. Try to pay, as you're paying attention to the cues and clues, you might say, okay, this is what I think is happening, or this might be what's happening. You can try to articulate it to your loved ones or people that you are sharing partners with. But here we go. The moon is enclosed between Jupiter and Venus, Venus and Gemini. This is a Gemini moon on 23 April 2023. It's here right around 2-3 in the afternoon in Central Europe. You get this moon. It conjoins Venus in the 15th degree of Gemini, then applies for 10 degrees before it then will apply to that sextile to Jupiter, that Venus-Jupiter sextile, the benefic planets in Aries and Gemini, 2 outer world signs of, who we are and describing the curiosities around us. So allow yourself some of that here in between eclipses. Maybe you're feeling more active, and that's okay. Astrologers like me are like, calm down, wait, everything's delaying, Mercury's retrograde. Well, so what if you're feeling pulled to the outer world? That's what Jupiter and Aries and Venus and Gemini might be pulling you into as they relate here to the moon during this waxing cycle. I think too, while you have the moon in Gemini here, there's those Mars retrograde experiences we all went through, that this could be a time to confront those anew, or look back a little bit on August 20th last year until, was it March 23rd when Mars left Gemini, that whole long period of Mars there. I think this transit's a nice one to appreciate those changes and feel into the new you, enjoy the new you in the Gemini sector. Second chart, this is the waxing Leo moon. If I had to do something during this waxing phase, if I was forced to, now Mercury's retrograde, I don't want to, but if I was forced to, I would pick this Leo moon. I think it's a wonderful moon. Look how beautiful it is. It's waxing here. It's making an applying trine to Jupiter on 29 April 2023, 11 in the morning in Central Europe. The moon, its ruler, is the sun. The domicile ruler of Leo is the sun. The moon is in a mutual reception flywheel loop with the sun, because the exaltation lord of Taurus, where the sun is now, is that moon. So the moon and the sun are doing some really lovely dynamic exchanges vis-a-vis a fixed square. And it applies to Jupiter, its night triplicity lord. And there's this beautiful reception with all of it. And so I'm really happy about it. I say Leo here is the self that shines into the world. The eclipsed Aries gives way to a power Leo moon. So in some sense, this self is eclipsed. And maybe the action, how we thought we wanted to act as a result of our selfhood, that's now altered as a result of the eclipse. And this waxing Leo moon is supporting this question: who are you becoming? Who are we becoming? These might be cues or clues that I was talking about earlier that we can pay attention to right under this waxing Leo moon. And yeah, so it's beautiful. This is the one I'll throw if you're really looking to take some action, but if not, feel into this identity and knowledge of the self that the eclipse has given you. And then finally, the 4 May 2023, 10 in the morning, Central Europe. This is that Libra moon in the Egyptian terms of Venus in late Libra, applying to oppose Jupiter in Aries and applying to trine Venus in Gemini. So you can see all of these 3 moons I've looked at are relating to Venus because they're all in air or fire signs, either sextiling, co-present, or trining Venus. So we're pivoting around that Venus in Gemini with the moons, this waxing cycle that I'm liking. Here it trines Venus in Gemini. I already said that. It's closing out the Venus in Gemini moment during Mercury retrograde. So in this chart, Mercury has now had its cazimi and it's now moving to become a morning star. Venus is just finishing out its time in Gemini, ruled by that Mercury. So the Venus in Gemini is all about pause and reflection and review and delay and wait because of this Mercury retrograde. But then you get the moon trine to it, and we're closing out Venus's time in Gemini. That's one thing about it this time. It really did take on a flavor of backwardation because of the Mercury retrograde period. But I say here, pause and note the beauty and love. Identify the beauty and love around you. This could be a great chart for that. Again, reflective, waxing phase between eclipses, where we can sort of note with curiosity the love of the things that have emerged over the last period and appreciate them and wait with our loved ones to experience the beauty and the mystery of the eclipse reality and of life itself, frankly. All right, that is the Aries solar eclipse video. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. I'm glad to be here sharing the astrology. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com. Check out my reading schedule. Other than that, look for some more videos. I hope to make a few more this month, some shorter videos about, I've got a presidential prediction. I'm going to do that soon because I made my prediction. I'll wait. It's already talked about it on Twitter, but I'm going to do a breakdown, full breakdown as to why I'm predicting the winner that I'm predicting. So I hope to do that somewhat soon too. So stay tuned for that. Talk soon. Peace.